From the Smith government leaning once again on the notwithstanding clause to anticipated legislation on private health delivery and new leadership at Alberta Municipalities. Time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Ray Martin, former MLA, former leader of the Alberta NDP, and Graham Thomson, a longtime political columnist in the province. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the Smith government turning to the notwithstanding clause for the second time in less than a month. And the Premier says, as with a teacher strike, it's being used again for the well-being of children.
These measures reflect the views of an overwhelming majority of Albertans, and it is our responsibility to make sure that they are not overturned.
I believe that we have a duty to protect our children and youth and provide safeguards for their futures so they can grow, they can learn, and they can mature to make informed decisions as adults.
The government bringing forward Bill 9 this week reinforces legislation the UCP passed last year around healthcare, education, and sports involving transgender Albertans. Those bills put restrictions on students changing pronouns at school, transgender athletes competing in female leagues, and medical therapies for transgender children. Invoking the notwithstanding clause, of course, means the bills cannot be challenged in court. Ray, I'll start with you in leaning again on this clause. What message do you feel the government is sending here?
A very confusing one, frankly. The young people, the transgender people, they have their lives. They want to keep going with the things that they see important, and you have the provincial government interfering and getting in the way and making it very complicated for both the transgender people and their parents and everybody else. So it's why she's sticking her nose into this and creating havoc with the transgender people, their parents and other friends and that. Why do it? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, Graham, what would make it necessary to preemptively invoke the clause? Did the government not express confidence back when that these laws in question would withstand charter challenges?
Well, they always say that, but I think they're afraid they would lose in court. And of course, they're saying it would take so long for a decision to come out on this. They've got to invoke the notwithstanding clause now to get these laws put through, rammed through in a sense. No one can challenge them. They knew they're going to be challenged, and they knew they might very well lose this. And as for Ray's point about why they're doing this, I got to say, to me, there's no coincidence that next week is when the UCP has its annual general meeting. And even though Smith is not up for a leadership review as she was last year, she's still playing to her base, the fringe base, who thinks that children are being forced, their sex is being changed forcibly. So she is playing to that base. And this, to me, if the teachers being forced back to work and then doing all this when it comes to the transgender issues, to me, this is her, again, playing to her base. When she goes to that AGM next week, she'll get another standing ovation because they are doing because she is doing what they have told her to do.
Ray, the AUPE and representing licensed practical nurses and healthcare aides served strike notice late this morning. How likely is the notwithstanding clause to come up again, should there in fact be another public sector strike?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. If the strike goes on, then there's not much they can do. They've created the problem, and now the problem is biting back. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes with the strike and how the government, the Smith government, reacts to it. My guess is that it's going to be very difficult for them because the people, whether it's nurses, whether it's labor people, whatever, people are angry out there, and they want justice, and they don't feel they're getting it from this government, and they're not getting it from this government.
All right, next up, the Smith government not denying details of a leaked memo on private health delivery, a discussion that came up during question period Tuesday.
We've had great success in Alberta augmenting the majority of our surgeries, which are provided in hospital, 80%, with 20% provided in our chartered surgical facilities. Mr. Speaker, none of this occurs without a willing Alberta healthcare professional and a willing Albertan.
So given that the leaked cabinet documents demonstrate that UCP is moving full speed ahead on American-style pay-as-you-go healthcare, which minister over there is comfortable if one of their loved ones has cancer, having to pull out a credit card to pay for access?
According to reporting by the Globe and Mail, the leaked memo discusses legislative amendments that would allow doctors to practice in both public and private health sectors. The Premier and the health ministers deny the possibility of a two-tiered system and say a hybrid model would strengthen options for Albertans. Graham, surprised to see the government pursuing such a change to the healthcare system, or have the breadcrumbs been there pointing the way to such a development?
Well, breadcrumbs, an entire loaf. They've been dropping loaves in terms of giving us directions what they're going to do. This is not a big surprise at all. You had the Premier, a few months ago talking about, when hospital surgical facilities are not being used by the hospitals, they could be used by private clinics. So the government has talked about, we'll always have public paying for the delivery of healthcare. It may be more private healthcare in the sense of you can get private but being paid for by the public. What we're seeing now is a real shift towards private healthcare, period. And this is something that people have been fighting against. You go back to Ralph Klein. He had this idea and he got a big pushback from the from the public. This time around, it's sort of incremental. We can see the direction this government is headed to get more private delivery of healthcare and actually have them people pay for this private healthcare. It looks like a two-tier healthcare. It sounds like two-tier healthcare, and it walks like two-tier healthcare. It certainly is, to me, two-tier healthcare, and that's something Albertans won't like, but we'll see the reaction once the government actually starts bringing this in.
Ray, how do you see such a move changing Alberta's health system?
Well, it's destructive. It's going to change it dramatically. All you're doing is bringing private health care in to compete with the public system. And that's not what people want. That's not what Albertans want. But it's their ideology that the private sector is always better. And it's not. Our public health care is a need that we have to have, but the provincial government doesn't see it that way.
Is it, you see it as a means of competition between two types of systems?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had public health care for a long time, and all of a sudden now they're sneaking in private health care. So clearly the government, the Smith government, wants to bring in at least some private health care. And that's not good for Albertans. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for anybody other than them. They think they need it.
Graham, there's obviously already debate across the floor of the legislature, but to pick up on your point earlier, to what degree of debate do you see developing amongst Albertans? Does it go back to 2006 and the Klein era?
Yeah, this is an interesting point because healthcare, on public opinion polls, two big issues: cost of living and healthcare. And this government's got a real problem. It's changing the healthcare system, blowing it up and reforming it. It's not really clear as to why they're doing it. Lots of problem in the healthcare system. It's almost like they're throwing things at the wall to see what will stick, and also a fire hose of information that's hard for people to keep up with. And the government keeps saying, look, this will be more choices. But it's been shown in other jurisdictions, when you let doctors, in a sense, walk away from the public sector, go to the private sector, that drains talent and resources away from the public sector. And it's a case where it actually comes back. Britain, NHS, is a real mess there, and they have doctors doing private and public. So this is going to be something to see how the NDP pushes this issue. This is going to be one of these issues that could be very much an election issue. And so I think that this is going to be something Albertans should be paying attention to, and we'll see how the government handles that, if in fact they do go ahead with it.
All right. We need to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, new leadership at the organization representing Alberta Municipalities. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. We heard from Grand Prairie City Councillor Dylan Bressie off the top this evening, the newly elected president of Alberta Municipalities, and we touched on some hot-button taxation issues that came to the floor of the organization's fall convention last week. Ray, what do you feel Albertans should expect to come of Alberta Municipalities passing a resolution that pushes the provincial government to collect its own education property tax?
Well, it makes sense, absolute sense, that it's their taxes, they can collect it. It shouldn't be up to the provincial government. And I think that's self-evident. And the municipalities are saying the same thing. So hopefully this is something that the provincial government could do. They don't do much right, but maybe this might be something they could at least look at.
Graham, as we heard in the discussion, there's considerable turnover on municipal councils in the wake of October elections. To what degree do you see that resetting relations between Alberta municipalities and the Smith government?
Yeah, it would go a long way. I think it's a small move, but it's important because right now, when people look at their tax, the property taxes in the civic governments, and you see the taxes going up, they get irritated, to say the least. Albertans are a tax-averse group of people. We've seen that public opinion polls. Janet Brown's pointed that out. Tax-averse Albertans. So the thing is, the Alberta government should be collecting the education tax, because when you see your taxes go up at the civic level, and you can say the civic government has nothing to do with it because the government's actually raising the education tax, then it's an issue I think the province has to deal with. But it's a case of, you got the province very often downloading expenses and costs onto civic governments. Here they're downloading public ire onto the civic governments, because when you see your taxes go up, and it's actually the property taxes, the education portion of that, that's really the government's responsibility to take over.
Right. There's a new president at the helm. What kind of weight do you see a reinvigorated Alberta Municipalities organization carrying with the current Smith government?
Well, I'm just looking that there some people are already commenting on this, and I think that the people in the municipal areas know that they're paying the taxes, but the provincial government is in the way. So they're pushing for it, and I think that they should get it. I mean, it's the things that they have to do, they need the taxes to do it. So they shouldn't have to deal with the provincial government on it. It should be their own municipalities. And I noticed that the town of Rocky Mountain House put forward the resolution, and the vote was over 80% for them to control their own taxes. So that sends a message, I think.
Graham, where that relationship with the province is concerned, what kind of pressure do you see sitting on the shoulders of Dylan Bressie as he takes the reins of president?
Yeah, it's interesting because, look, the government has done a lot when it comes to taking away powers from the local governments. Because when it comes to the Constitution, the federal Constitution, you have the federal government there, you have the provincial governments that are recognized. Local governments are not recognized in the federal Constitution. It's basic. They're all creatures. Like civic governments are creatures of the provincial government. So the government in Alberta has been doing a lot to take away the powers of the local governments. A lot of people are upset. Things like bringing in political parties into the civic elections in Edmonton and Calgary, and so you've got the cities and any civic governments looking to get that power back. So I think there could be something the province should do, even as a token, to say, we will work with you, because you got a lot of animosity and friction, especially between the civic governments in Edmonton and Calgary and the UCP. So we'll see if this actually makes a dent in the consciousness of the Alberta government.
And Ray, obviously you've been around politics for a long time. What is it about the Grand Prairie area that keeps churning out leadership for what used to be the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association and is now the Alberta Municipalities, period?
Well, I'm thinking back in the past, and you may recall we had a fairly famous leader called Grant Notley that worked in that area.
There's another big name.
Yes. So, yeah, it's just I think that that in there in Peace River, Grand Prairie, Rycroft, the people there are really politically astute, and I think that continues to this day.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.